Stranger Things doesn't just give us 80s nostalgia and supernatural horror, it presents some of television's most psychologically complex villains. From government conspiracies to interdimensional monsters, these antagonists represent the darkest aspects of human nature in cosmic horror. And the most terrifying part, many of their motivations stem from very human psychological wounds. Number 15. Troy Walsh, Bullying, Psychology, and Social Dominance. Peyton Wish's Troy represents the psychology of childhood bullying driven by the need to establish social dominance and mask personal insecurities through aggression. Troy's psychology shows how some children use cruelty to others as a way to feel powerful and important when they feel powerless in other areas of their lives. His targeting of Mike's group reveals someone who instinctively identifies vulnerability and exploits it to make himself feel superior and in control. What makes his psychology realistic is how his bullying escalates when he feels his social position is threatened, showing how fragile the bully's sense of self really is. Number 14. Neil Hargrove, Domestic Abuse Psychology and Toxic Masculinity. Will Chase's Neil Hargrove represents the psychology of domestic abusers who use violence and intimidation to maintain control over their families while projecting an image of respectability. Neil's psychology shows how abusive parents often create cycles of violence by teaching their children that aggression is the only acceptable way to express emotion or solve problems. His treatment of Billy reveals someone whose own masculinity is so fragile that he sees any deviation from his rigid standards as a personal threat that must be violently corrected. What makes his psychology dangerous is how he uses societal expectations of father-son relationships to justify abuse while maintaining plausible deniability to outsiders. Number 13. Colonel Jack Sullivan, Military Paranoia and National Security Obsession. Sherman Augustus's Colonel Sullivan represents the psychology of military leadership consumed by paranoia and the belief that any unknown threat justifies extreme measures. Sullivan's psychology operates on the principle that national security trumps individual rights, making him willing to sacrifice innocent people to eliminate perceived threats. His inability to distinguish between 11 as a person and 11 as a weapon shows how military thinking can dehumanize individuals and reduce them to strategic assets or threats. What makes his psychology realistic is how he genuinely believes he's protecting America, showing how institutional authority can corrupt moral reasoning. Number 12. Jason Carver, Religious Extremism and Moral Panic Psychology. Mason Dye's Jason Carver represents the psychology of someone whose grief and religious beliefs combine to create dangerous moral panic and vigilante justice. Jason's psychology shows how personal trauma can be channeled into religious extremism when someone needs to find meaning and someone to blame for senseless tragedy. His ability to convince others to join his crusade reveals how charismatic leaders can exploit community fear and religious beliefs to justify violence against innocent people. What makes his psychology tragic is how his genuine love for Chrissy becomes twisted into a need for revenge that ultimately makes him complicit in the very evil he's trying to fight. Number 11. Murray Bauman, Early Antagonist, Paranoid Conspiracy Psychology. Brett Gelman's Murray initially represents the psychology of conspiracy theorists whose paranoid thinking accidentally leads them to real conspiracies, validating their worldview. Murray's psychology shows how some people become so invested in finding hidden patterns and secret plots that they lose the ability to distinguish between real and imagined threats. His transformation from antagonist to ally reveals how paranoid thinking can sometimes be adaptive when there really are conspiracies, but it can also make someone difficult to work with. What makes his psychology interesting is how his paranoid instincts are both his greatest strength and his biggest weakness in dealing with actual supernatural threats. Number 10. Billy Hargrove, Abuse Cycle and Displaced Aggression. Dacre Montgomery's Billy represents the psychology of someone caught in the cycle of abuse, victimized at home but becoming an aggressor towards others as a way to reclaim power and control. Billy's psychology shows how childhood abuse can create individuals who perpetuate violence because it's the only way they know how to feel powerful and in control. His racism and aggression towards Lucas reveals how some abuse victims displace their anger onto vulnerable targets rather than confronting their actual abusers. What makes his psychology tragic is how his final sacrifice shows that underneath his aggression was someone capable of love and heroism when given the chance to break the cycle. Number 9. The Flayed Mind Flayer hosts possession, psychology, and loss of agency. The Flayed represents the psychology of possession and loss of personal agency. People whose minds and bodies are controlled by an external force, while traces of their original personality remain trapped inside. Their psychology shows the horror of being aware but unable to control your own actions, representing every person's fear of losing autonomy and becoming a puppet. What makes their psychology disturbing is how they retain enough of their original personality to make their loved ones believe they're still themselves, while being completely controlled by the Mind Flayer. The process of flaying represents the gradual erosion of individual identity until only the collective consciousness remains. Number 8. The Demogorgon, predatory instinct and interdimensional hunting. The Demogorgon represents pure predatory psychology, a creature driven entirely by hunting instincts without any higher cognitive functions or moral considerations. Its psychology operates on the principle of following blood and pursuing prey with single-minded determination, representing humanity's primal fear of being hunted. What makes the Demogorgon psychologically terrifying is how it represents nature without conscience. It's not evil in the human sense, just completely alien and unstoppable. Its ability to move between dimensions makes it the ultimate stalker, able to appear anywhere and hunt its prey across multiple realities. Number 7. The Mind Flayer, collective consciousness and assimilation psychology. The Mind Flayer represents the psychology of a hive mind that seeks to assimilate all individual consciousness into its collective, eliminating personal identity and free will. Its psychology operates on the principle that individual consciousness is inefficient and chaotic, making collective consciousness superior and more orderly. What makes the Mind Flayer's psychology terrifying is how it doesn't just want to kill its enemies. It wants to absorb them and make them part of itself, eliminating their individuality forever. The use of possessed humans shows sophisticated understanding of psychological manipulation and the exploitation of human emotional bonds. Number 6. Vecna, Henry Creel, 001, nihilistic philosophy and reality manipulation. Jamie Campbell Bower's Vecna represents the psychology of someone whose psychic abilities and traumatic experiences lead to complete nihilism and the belief that reality itself is flawed and must be remade. Henry's psychology stems from his early realization that he could see into people's minds and witness their darkest thoughts, leading him to conclude that humanity is fundamentally corrupt. His transformation into Vecna shows how someone with godlike powers can become convinced that they have the right to judge and reshape reality according to their vision. What makes his psychology terrifying is how his genuine insights into human darkness become justification for cosmic-level genocide and reality manipulation. Number 5. Dr. Sam Owens, institutional complicity and moral compromise. Paul Reiser's Dr. Owens represents the psychology of someone who works within corrupt institutions while trying to maintain moral principles, leading to constant ethical compromise. Owens' psychology shows how good people can become complicit in terrible things when they believe they're working for the greater good or trying to minimize harm from within the system. His relationship with 11 reveals someone who genuinely cares about the children affected by Hawkins' lab, while being unable to fully protect them due to institutional constraints. What makes his psychology complex is how his attempts to be ethical within an unethical system often put him in impossible positions where any choice causes harm. Number 4. Dr. Martin Brenner, scientific obsession and parental manipulation. Matthew Modine's Dr. Brenner represents the psychology of someone whose scientific curiosity and need for control override all ethical considerations, even toward the children in his care. Brenner's psychology shows how some people can commit horrific acts while genuinely believing they're helping their victims, creating a twisted form of parental relationship. His treatment of 11 and the other test subjects reveals someone who's convinced himself that his abuse is actually love and that his experiments are for the greater good. What makes his psychology particularly disturbing is how he uses paternal language and affection to manipulate children while subjecting them to psychological and physical torture. This one's especially disturbing because it shows how authority figures can abuse children while convincing themselves they're helping. Brenner's psychology reflects real-world patterns of institutional child abuse. How do people justify such cruelty? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Number 3. The Upside Down itself. Environmental horror and corrupted reality. The Upside Down represents the psychology of environmental horror, a reality that's been corrupted and twisted into something that mirrors our world but strips away everything that makes it livable. Its psychology operates as a dark reflection of our reality, showing us what our world would look like if all life and hope were drained from it. What makes the Upside Down psychologically terrifying is how familiar yet wrong everything is. It's recognizable enough to navigate, but alien enough to be constantly unsettling. The decay and darkness represent the fear that our reality could be corrupted or destroyed, leaving only a hollow shell that looks like home but feels like death. Number 2. The Shadow Monster Mind Flayer. True form. Cosmic horror and incomprehensible evil. The true Mind Flayer represents cosmic horror psychology, an entity so alien and vast that human minds can't fully comprehend its motivations or methods. Its psychology operates on scales and principles completely foreign to human understanding, making it impossible to predict, negotiate with, or fully defeat. What makes the Mind Flayer's psychology terrifying is how it treats entire realities as resources to be consumed, showing complete indifference to individual suffering or survival. Its ability to corrupt and control other beings shows a form of evil that doesn't just destroy, it transforms everything it touches into extensions of itself. Number 1. Hawkins National Laboratory. Institutional evil and government conspiracy. The Hawkins Lab represents the most terrifying villain in Stranger Things because it's not a monster. It's a system that creates monsters while hiding behind government authority and scientific legitimacy. The lab's psychology operates on the principle that national security and scientific advancement justify any action, no matter how horrific, especially when the victims are children who can't fight back. What makes the lab's psychology most disturbing is how it creates a diffusion of responsibility where individuals can commit atrocities while believing they're just following orders or serving the greater good. The institution's ability to cover up its crimes and continue operating shows how systemic evil can be more dangerous and persistent than any individual villain. Its treatment of 11 and the other children represent the ultimate betrayal of trust, using the very institutions meant to protect children to exploit and abuse them instead. What makes this number 1 is how the lab's institutional psychology creates all the other threats in the series. It opens the gate to the Upside Down, creates 11's trauma, and enables Brenner's abuse while providing him with resources and protection.